Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed. We begin on the second line off the top. Tanu Rabbanan. So back to the halacha of Stam Yenam. So we learned in the Mishnah that wine obtained from a guy is asur, not only asur to drink, but also asur bahano. One may not benefit from that wine, can't sell it, etc. Now, if it's actually yain nesech means it was poured and offered in that way to the Avodah Zarah, to the idol, then it's certainly asur, min haTorah, because it's like the like zivchei mesim, it's like the animal offerings, which are asur bahano, as we discussed yesterday. The Chachamim applied the same identical status to stam yenam, unspecified, so to speak, wine from a guy. So it's wine obtained from a guy, which was not necessarily offered to his Avodah Zarah, but the halacha is that that too is considered like yain nesech. It has the same status, the same halacha. It's asur b'shtia and b'hana, for concern that it may have been offered to the Avodah Zarah, and the added component as well, which is called chasnus. We're concerned about social interaction with a guy, which can lead to marriage. So, on account of all these concerns, stam yenam is asur. Now, it's only with respect to wine that could theoretically be offered to the Avodah Zarah. Therefore, says the Brisa, Tanu Rabbanan yain mevushal, you have cooked wine. Now, they don't serve cooked wine to the idol, right? But if the guy cooked up his own wine, it doesn't really help it much, because it had already become asur before the wine was cooked. Or valuntis, you have this sort of potion, this sort of concoction, wine with other ingredients, which in its current state is not suitable for Avodah Zarah. But since it was originally wine, pure wine, so all these shalai d'kechavim coming from the goyim asurin are asur, because they never lost their isur, just because it was then transformed into its current configuration. But aluntis kivriyasa muteris. But if the guy purchased this aluntis wine / other ingredients potion from a yid kivriyasa as it is, as a finished product, certainly it's okay to use that from the guy, because by the time that guy got it, it was no longer ro'oi, suitable for Avodah Zarah. Ve'izohi aluntis, what exactly is this? How do you make this? Kedesanya, we have a brisa, Mesachas Shabbos, Gabi Shabbos. On Shabbos, you can make all kinds of dips and drinks, but you can't prepare a medicine unless it's critical because of concerns of malacha, etc. So Gabi Shabbos, we learn oisin anumlin. You can make this anumlin, a type of drink, no problem. But not aluntis, which is meant for remedial purposes. Rashi says they would drink it to chill themselves after a real serious bathhouse experience. So that you don't make on Shabbos. How exactly do you make this anumlin? And what exactly is the aluntis? So the anumlin is made as follows: yain, udvash pilplin, a mix of wine, honey, and pepper. Aluntis is yain yoshan, aged wine, umayim tzlulin. You add some water which had been sitting around and became properly filtered. Vafarsamin, and this farsamin extract, this perfume extract, and you mix them together. You have a drink, and that's meant for the abdil b'mesus. It's made for the bathhouse on your way out to cool yourself down. Now, what about diluted wine? Their wines were very strong. They had to dilute them with water. At that point, shall we say the isur yain nesech, isur stam yenam is still applicable or not? Meaning, would the guy use that wine to offer to the Avodah Zarah? Likewise, what about the halach of gilui? So we learn many times that one is not meant to leave in a place where there are insects around, there's snakes around, you're not meant to leave your liquids exposed for concern that the snake might come, have a drink to cool himself off. The snake is a very passionate animal, and he has to cool himself down. He's drawn after drinks and wine and waters, and he might drink and dump his venom into that liquid, which would endanger any person who would go ahead and drink that. So you're meant to be careful not to be megala, not to leave your liquids exposed to the elements. This is more prevalent. This was more prevalent in those days when they lived around, when snakes were more prevalent in their areas. But today, in urban, built-up areas, typically this is not a concern, unless you're out in the country or whatever. So the question is, what about cooked wine? Is the snake drawn after that as well? Would he drink from it? Does it pose a danger? What about diluted wine? So here goes a discussion regarding both these types of altered, so to speak, wines. So we start with Rab Rav Yosef. They both tell us, Damar Tavayu, Yain Mazuk. Mixed wine, Ein by Mishum Giloy, don't worry about exposing it to the elements. Snake wouldn't touch that. He only likes the original wine. We'll see from the Gemara. The snakes in those days apparently were made of different stock than today's snakes. They were apparently smart and capable and knew exactly what they wanted. The original snake at the time of Adam Rishon, right? He had legs. He was a full-grown creature. He was Aram, the smartest, the wisest of all. So apparently, in the time of the Gemara, he still had some of his old talents. In any case, so according to Rabbi Rav Yosef, Yain mazuk ema mishum gilui. If it's diluted wine, don't worry about gilui. Yain mevushal ema mishum yain nisach or nesach, according to some gersa. If it's cooked wine which had been cooked, been taken past a certain temperature, like we have today, most of our bottles are yain mevushal. In order to avoid the issue of the contact with the goy, there's no concern of nesach. He wouldn't use that for the Avodah Zarah. So what about the reverse? Iboil. Here comes a question. Yain mevushal. So it's cooked wine. Yesh b'mishum giloy or yein b'mishum giloy. So we know there's no issue of yain nesach. What about the giloy issue? Would the snake be drawn after that or not? Toshma. Let's try to prove this point from a halacha. Heyid Rabbi Yaakov Baridi. He came and testified, Al yain mevushal she'ema mishum giloy. Don't worry about giloy if it's yain mevushal. Says the word, there was a story regarding Rabbi Yanai Bar Yishmael. He fell ill, a chalash, and he had some visitors, all legabei, who came in to visit, Rabbi Shmuel ben Zirud, and the other chachamim v'rabbanon, l'shiyu lebei, to come ask him how he's doing, to come visit him. No. What do chachamim do when they sit around? They discuss divrei Torah. Yasri v'kami boilu, they were sitting and having a discussion. They posed a question. This very same question. Yain mevushal. If the yain is already mevushal, is there a concern regarding a snake coming and drinking and dumping his venom into that wine or not? Yesh b'mishum gilu or yein b'mishum gilu? That was the question. Amalu Rabbi Shmuel ben Zirud. Rabbi Shmuel ben Zirud responded with a quote, Hachi Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. The following was said and taught by Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish in the name of a great man, Umishum Gavar Rabbi, the name of a great man who was he Rabbi Chia. And he concluded that what? Not to worry. Yain mevushal, you're safe and sound. Ein boy mishum gilu, don't worry about gilu. So that was his offering to the crowd. Amrulay, so they responded to him. Well, should we really rely on that statement? I mean, you're telling it to us as an absolute halacha. Nismach, should we rely on it? Machvil Rabbi Shmuel. So the host, Rabbi Shmuel, responded with a gesture. Sure. With full confidence, it's upon me and my neck. Basically, I'm taking responsibility for this halacha. Go ahead, rely on him, and enjoy your wine. There was a story with Shmuel, the famous Shmuel V'Avlat, and this non-Jewish intellectual, stargazer, whose name was Avlat, who was apparently Shmuel's acquaintance, and they were sitting and having a discussion of a Yasri, and they were served wine. And actually it was cooked wine. Now Avlat clearly was knowledgeable in the halachas and the concepts of yain nesach. So mashchel yadi, he pulled his hand back to avoid coming into contact with the wine, in order so that he doesn't taint it. In which case Shmuel can go ahead and drink it. Hamali Shmuel says not to worry. What are you jumping? Hari Amr yain mevushal ema mishum yain nesach. It was said that yain mevushal carries no concern of yain nesach. You're free to touch it. You can have a drink. There was a story with Amsei Rabbi Chia. In Rabbi Chia's household, there was this maidservant. Igluyai lo nahu chamra mavashla. So in this case, she had chamra mavashla, yain mevushal, but it was nizgala to the elements. It was left open, vulnerable to the snakes. Actually, Rabbi Chia, so she came to Rabbi Chia with a question. Can we use the wine? Amar Lois, he says, not to worry. Hari Amr, it was said, yain mevushal, aim boy, there's no concern, mishum gilui. A similar story happened in Rav Ada bar Ava's home. Shamei, the assistant, the servant of the Rav Ada bar Ava, igali lechamar meziga. He had diluted wine, uncooked but diluted, and it was left open and exposed. What can we do? Amar Lisi says, there's no concern of snakes drinking from this type of wine once it's been mixed and diluted with water. Rashi says, typically the word mazik refers to 2 portions water with 1 portion of wine, so it's 2 to 1. Amar Lisi says, Hari Amr, it was said, yain mazuk, don't worry, ain't by mishum gilu, there's no concern of gilu. Amar Rav, Papa le'amar, that's only true el demazuk too if it's properly mixed, properly diluted, so it has a high water content. The snake is uninterested. Aval mazuk le'mazuk, what's just slightly mixed? Shasi, the snake will come and drink. Really? Umazuk ve'mazuk mishasi, if it's only slightly diluted, the snake will want to come drink from it. We have a story which indicates otherwise. What happened to him? Havakazal ba'arba was traveling on a ship, on a boat. And with him there was some wine. And suddenly he notices this snake, this water snake, who was slicing through the water and coming for an attack, coming to drink the wine. So in order to repel the snake, so Rabbi bar Rav Huna told the butler, Sami eini dedain, poke out his eyes. Rashi explains, just a way of saying, get him to be disinterested in the wine. Do something with the wine to make him lose his interest and appetite. So what did he do? Shakal kalimaya. So he took a little bit of water, just a little bit, not 66%, which is the standard formula. He took just a drop, shadabay, and he spilled it into the wine, and that was enough to do the trick to get the snake to back out. B'sar lacharein, he backed out. Apparently, even if it's slightly mixed, would be enough to allay any concern. So this doesn't jive with Rav Papa, who told us that if it's only slightly diluted, it would still be attractive to the snakes. Says the Gemara, Achaya Masar Nafshi. Although he would drink even slightly diluted wine, but he wouldn't actually make that effort, be Masar Nefesh, and imperil his safety by approaching wine which is sitting, amongst people. So if it's achaya, meaning if it's pure wine, undiluted, he would be meiser nefesh. But if it's diluted, even slightly diluted, that's not enough for him to come be meiser nefesh and partake of the wine with people standing around. So again, if it's pure wine, undiluted, he goes all out. If it's fully diluted, right, then he's disinterested. But it's slightly diluted, then he would drink it, but he wouldn't be meiser nefesh. Okay, says the Gemara, really? So if it's diluted wine, he's not Meiser Nefesh, even slightly diluted. Certainly, if it's fully diluted, really, we have a story. Hava, he came to the town of Beyach Puri. This name of a town. But some say it was really Bar Hedya, not Bar Yana. It was Bar Hedya, who visited Hava Beyach Puri. And what happened there? Hava Yasvi. They were sitting around. They were drinking Chamra Maziga, diluted wine. Pashlu Chamra Bekuva. And they had some leftover wine in the container. Vitzaruni, and they covered it bifrunke with a material, to keep it safe, to keep it covered. Okay, so they wrapped this material tightly around the lid, around the mouth of the container, and suddenly they have a visitor, V'chazya, and he noticed Lahu Chivya, the snake, who came for a visit. Now, problem is the wine is inaccessible because it's covered by this material lid. So what do? This smart snake to get try to get that wine out of the container. So what do? The shakal maya, he got hold of water, and he spilled it into the. He kept on pouring more and more water into this container through the material until it overflowed, and he drank the overflow. Ad the mullah bekuva, until the water filled to the top of the kuva, and it spilled over, right? V'solak chamra ilovei perunka, and that wine spilled over, right? So he drank this mix, the wine that came through the perunka, through the cover. V'shasin, he drank. Apparently, he wasn't too perturbed about this company sitting around there. He was Meiser Nefesh, and he came in full view just to get out that diluted wine. Apparently, he's Meiser Nefesh even for that. Says the Gemara. Here it's different. It's different. Typically, he would not be Meiser Nefesh for diluted wine. Amri. So the answer was given like this. The mazag ihu shasi. Here it's different because he himself diluted it. For some reason, his own mixture he's okay with. The mazigi achrini le shasi. Those that are mixed by others, he wouldn't drink. So again, if it's pure wine, he goes all out. He's Meiser Nefesh. If it's fully diluted, he doesn't bother. Unless it's his own mix. If it's been diluted by others, even slightly, well, he'll drink it unless it requires great effort, meaning he wouldn't sacrifice b'meiser nefesh for that. Amar Rav Ashi, v'temer Rav Masharsha. So Rav Ashi, or some say Rav Masharsha, challenged this whole arrangement, meaning we set down this sort of notion that a snake would not come to Yain Mazug, and although we have stories to indicate otherwise, a story with the boat, a story with the overflow, we gave them answers, right? We solved the kasha by offering all kinds of answers to explain why these are exceptional cases, right? But we want to still stick to that original established sort of theory that the snake would not be attracted to Yain Mazuk, right? So basically, if you leave your Yain Mazuk, fully diluted wine, out in the open, don't worry about snakes. Pirukla Sakanta. Basically, your answers are with relation to something that relates to danger, to sakana. Meaning we have indicators otherwise that a snake would be attracted to mazuk. So how can we be so sure and confident that our explanations are valid? That really Yain Mazuk is not a concern. He wouldn't drink it. These are exceptional cases. Who's to say that's true? Perhaps we should draw a different conclusion from these stories and conclude that in fact a snake is attracted even to Mazuk, in which case you should not leave your Mazuk outside. It's a question of sakana here, right? And in fact that's how the Gemara concludes. The bottom line is Yain Mazuk, even if it's fully diluted wine, there's a concern of Giloi, and also V'yesh bo mishim Yain Nesech, and even though it's diluted, there's a concern of Yain Nesech. Technically the guy can still use it for the Avodah Zarah, so the same halacha applies. Whereas if it's cooked, that's different. Yain mevushal, no concern about gilui, because that would not be drunk by a snake. And likewise, ve'eba mishum, there's no concern of yain nesech, because he would not offer that to the Avodah Zarah. Shamid Rav Chilki bar Tuvi. So this next incident occurred with the Shamas of Rav Chilki bar Tuvi. Iglaya le'okissa demaya. So he had this container of water, which was left open, left exposed. He was actually dozing off near the water. Nu, is a snake deterred by the presence of a person, a sleeping person? So he came to his host. He says, even though Hari Amr, it was said, Eimas Yoshin Alein, the snake is fearful, is intimidated by a person's presence, even if he's asleep, for concern that he might wake up and attack the snake. But that's only a daytime nap. The snake knows that he's about to wake up, so he's afraid to approach. But if it's at night, the snake knows that the man is unlikely to wake up, so he's not concerned about his presence. So it would depend on whether he was sleeping, whether it happened by day or night, or at night. But the Gemara is not happy with this differentiation. It's incorrect. Doesn't matter whether it's daytime or nighttime. This concept that the snake is intimidated by the sleeping person. We don't hold to that. Fact is, if he's asleep, he's not actively watching, he's not actively aware. The snake will grab the opportunity and have his drink. Okay, further on this topic of Gilui Rav, the Amira Rav, Lo Shasim Be'armo. He wouldn't drink. There's a girsa Lo Shasim Maya. He wouldn't take water from a goy. Armo is a goy. Why? Because the goy is not doesn't adhere to the rules of Gilui. Amar, he says, look, Lezir be not careful with Gilui. Later the Gemara will tell us why the goyim were not concerned with Gilui. Their bodies work differently, so they weren't. It was not there on their map. But Mibe'ar Malta, but water offered him by an almana, a Jewish widow. So although she perhaps is not so well versed in the rules, but he would drink from their shasi Amar, because he says Sircha de Gavr Nikita. She certainly is upholding the practices established by her husband. Sircha means the practices, the Gavra of her husband, Nikita, she maintains. So we can be sure that the liquids had been kept under cover and safe. On the other hand, Shmuel lo shasi maya be'ar malta. He wouldn't drink the water of a Jewish widow. Amar, he says, less lame. So the gavra, she doesn't have her husband's presence. She doesn't have the sort of the fear. She's not intimidated by the husband because he's not around. And therefore, it isn't certain that she would cover her liquids, so he wasn't comfortable drinking her water. But he would take from a guy. Why? Although they're not concerned about this gilu issue of the the snakes, but but they're concerned about cleanliness. So it's assumed that they cover their liquids just to keep dirt and stuff out of it. Here comes another version of this discussion. Rav lo shasi maya be'arma. Rav would not accept a drink from a goy for concern of gilui avon be'armalto shasi, but yes from an almana. Okay, so this is the same as the first version. He would not take from the goy, but yes from the almana. Be'almana shasi. Shmuel wouldn't take from anybody. Lo shasi mai lo mi arma'a, because they neglect this whole issue of gilui. V'lim be'armalta, or from the almana, for concern that she's also not being careful with gilui. Amar Shimon Levi, shalosh shenis hein. Let me give you a list of 3 different types of wines without concern of gilui, because a snake would not approach these wines. It's not to his liking. Don't be concerned about gilui. What are these 3? Chad, mar, masik. One is the sharp one, the bitter one, or the sweet. As follows. Chad, that's the tilya harifa. It was a certain type of wine which was known to them, very sharp, very acidic. The matrizikit that can actually crack and burst the leather pouches containing that wine. If you leave it there long enough, it's very acidic. And the wine this type of wine doesn't attract the snake. He likes the better quality wine. What would define the second one? Mar, the bitter one. Yaranka, a certain type of wine. Rashi says ra omar, bad and bitter. What about the masik, the sweet one? What is that? Chulya. Rashi explains, it got sun sweetened. Basically, they leave the grapes on longer than usual, and it gets sweetened by the sun. And the wine made from that is not considered, best quality wine. So our snakes, or at least their snakes, only had a liking. He had a very discerning palate, right? Only took the best. Rav Chama actually had a different definition for these 3 wines, that they were actually improved. All of them. So the one that's called Chad, the sharp one, was improved because of the additives, Chamar or pilpulin. That's the wine mixed with pilpulin, with pepper or whatever, so that it would sharpen it, but it was actually an improvement on the wine. But nevertheless, it wouldn't attract the snake. The Mar variety, that's the Afsintin, that's the one made for medicinal purposes. They mix in some sort of ingredient which makes it bitter. So in a way, it's better quality because it's been upgraded, but nevertheless, it's unattractive to the snakes. And the Mosik, that's the sweet one, may barg some sort of high quality wine, which is sweeter than the rest. In any case, says Rashi, all these, ein nochash shoysim hen, it's not something a snake likes. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Karina, ein b'mishim gilui. This Karina type of wine poses no gilu concern, because again, it's not meant for a snake. My Karina, what exactly is this? Amar Bavo chamra chalya. It's that sweet wine, the asima asya, that comes from Asya. So the snake doesn't go for that. Amar Rav ubim kaimai. That's only because it was imported from Asya to our place. So our local snakes prefer the better wine. But over there in Asya, since the local snakes are accustomed to that drink, to that type of wine, they go for it. And therefore it poses a gilu concern. My time, you know why? Chamar Bedino. It's a local drink. Rashi says, they're used to this type of wine, accustomed to it, and they have a liking to it. Very interesting. Amar Rava. Chamar de akram. So you have wine which had begun fermenting, right? But it's not fully vinegar, it's just started the process. Ad tlosa yomi. So for the first 3 days, it's still classified as wine with respect to gilui as well. Yesh b'mishim gilui. Ub'mishim yain nesach, and it can theoretically become yain nesach as well, because it's considered full-fledged wine. Mekan ve'elach, past the 3-day mark, it's already sufficiently advanced into the vinegar process. Ein b'mishim gilui, ve'en b'mishim yain nesach. There's no concern of gilui or yain nesach. It's no longer considered a proper wine. V'nardoi amri, the chachamim nardo said, no, afilu basat lasa yomi chashin mishim giloi, even that past that 3-day mark, it still poses a gilu concern, because sometimes a snake can come have a quick drink, even though it's somewhat fermented. My time of why zimnan, it can happen mikri v'shasi, that he'll grab a drink even from this type of slightly fermented wine. Tanurabanan yain toiseis. Now we go the other way, freshly squeezed grape juice, before it started the fermenting process. Don't worry about gilui, because the snake doesn't like grape juice. But how long is this bubbling stage? How long does that take? Gilui yamim. So for the first 3 days after pressing, it's still bubbling. It's called yain taises. It doesn't interest a snake. Hashachlaim, that's the cress vegetable, which is mixed with some wine or water. So this type of concoction, this type of juice, don't worry about gilui, because the snakes are not attracted to it. But ubnei goyla, the bnei bavel, nog ben isser, they did. apply the halacha of gilui even to this, because sometimes a snake would even come for this. But this is certainly only a concern. It doesn't have any vinegar content, which makes it acidic and unattractive to snakes. But if it has some sort of vinegar in there, it would actually, discomfort the snake. The acidic content would make it difficult for the snake to drink it, and it would be unattractive to him. What about this Babylonian dip, consisting of breadcrumbs with milk and all kinds of stuff? Even though it's it's like a liquid, don't worry about gilui. Snakes are uninterested in this type of dip. However, once again, over there in Babel, Nogaba Isser, they did concern themselves even with the Kutach HaBavli and did not leave it unexposed. Amar Banashi. But certainly, if you find any peckings in this thing, then certainly it poses a concern, because we have a sign that a snake came around to visit. Amar Avchia bar Ashi, Amar Shmuel, May tif. So you have a container which is dripping water, so it has a leak and it's dripping into the bottom bowl. So tif means it's dropping. Eba mishum giloi, a snake would not come because of the noise, for concern that there are people around, so he doesn't take his chances. That's only if it's a constant drip, so that recurring noise scares off the snakes. What about a pite'ena? So you pick the fig, so at the cut, at that place where it's cut, it's sort of moist and exposed and open. Can it be left out in the farms like they used to, right? They just leave the figs out till it dries. What about snakes? Who may have come and squeezed, extracted some juice out of that, right? Anything that contains liquids and juice should pose a concern. No, don't worry about it. Ema mishum gilui, kiman ki aitana. It's following the opinion of Rabbi Lezer, son of Lezer Omer. One can freely have his grapes, his figs, even during nighttime, without any concerns. Don't worry about a snake having visited that fruit and partaken in it and dumped his venom. So even if it's at night, you can't discern whether it was pecked or whether it was tampered. We have a pasuk, Hashem guards, people who are innocent and trusting. And the Farshim explain, otherwise it would be impractical to have to grow figs, and because they typically are left out in the farms to dry. So in a situation such as this, Hashem does not demand or expect us to protect ourselves to this extent. So liquids and juices and drinks, fairly easy to cover and to protect. But these types of fruits, we apply Shomer P'sam Hashem, and Hashem will protect us. Omar of Safra, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda D'Reima. You should know, not all snake venoms are created equal. Shloisha mine eres hein. There are different types of venoms. Shal bacher, venom spattled forth from a bacher, a young, energetic snake. Sheikeh, that actually has lots of substance to it, and it would sink to the bottom of the barrel. Shal beinonim fapeh. If it's a middle-aged snake, then his venom isn't as thick, and it sort of hovers in the middle of that. Somewhere in the middle of that liquid container. Shalzak and Sof, the venom produced by an old snake, has less substance and actually is more of a foamy, spongy type. It floats to the top of the container. Now, what's the point of knowing this? The more later will tell us, because you never know where it is. So even if you don't see it on top, perhaps it was a young snake, so it sunk to the bottom, etc. Right? Remember, do you mean to say the kashish, the older the snake is, it weakens? Loses its power, really? Vatani, you have a brisa, just the opposite. Shleisha, there are three animals. Kolzman shemaskinen. The older they get, the stronger they get. Gevura mitaysevas bahen. What are these three? Eluain, dog, a fish. The bigger it is, the more powerful. The bigger, the powerful. Nachash, a snake. V'chazir, and a swine. So we see the older, the stronger, not weaker. Answers the Gemara koyach usufi d'kamoisav. You're right. The older the snake is, the stronger, the more powerful he is. But in terms of his venom, that gets diminished. Zihare, his venom, kolish, it gets weakened. So again, what's the point of discussing this? Shel bachar sharkelo, what's the point of telling us that the young snake's venom tends to sink to the bottom? It's needed for the following halach. Look at this sanya, as we find in the Bryce. Chavish and iskalsa. So you have a barrel of water, of wine, which had been left open. 9 people had already drunk from it with no adverse effects. Don't feel free to drink now. Lo yishtem men asiri. A 10th man should not have a drink from this barrel. It was in fact a story. Masahoya sheshasu menu tisha v'lamesu. 9 drank without a concern. V'shasa asiri v'mesu. A 10th man who came after them drank and died. Amar Rav Yirmiyah. Let me explain to you why. Zehu shokeya. Because apparently this snake was a young snake whose venom sinks to the bottom. That's why the first 9 who hadn't reached the bottom were safe, and it only affected the last fellow who took in the venom. Likewise, you have this melon which had been cut open and left in the open, shineskalsa. Likewise, it would attract a snake. Even if 9 partook without any adverse effects, lo yoichel men asiri, 10th man, keep away, because perhaps now he's going to chance upon the snake. In fact, there was a story. So 9 ate, did not die. The 10th man died. It's because the venom sunk to the bottom. So you have water which has been left open to the elements. There's a concern of venom content. Don't spill it out in the street, for concern that perhaps a barefoot person will come along and some of that venom will get trapped in between his toes and penetrate his skin and endanger him. Nor should he wash down the dust in his house with this type of liquid. So not only shouldn't you drink it, but you shouldn't leave it exposed. Nor should you mix it into the cement. Nor should you give it to your animal or your friend's animal to drink. Nor should he use it to wash his face, hands, and feet, where there are cracks and crevices, where the eris might get trapped. Others had a different formula. In terms of washing a person's face, only an area which has sirta, some cracks, some creases, then there's a concern. Ain sirta muta, but if it's a flat area, it's okay. So pretty much, it's a duplicate of the Tanakama, who forbade washing face, hands, and feet, which contain crevices and cracks. Any difference? Now, the difference will be gav hayad v'gav regel. So the top, the back of the hand, the top of the foot, which is considered hands and feet, but it's not a creased area. Or v'roini, the upper area, the api of one's face. So the upper part of the cheek, which is again more of a smooth area. So according to Achirim, there's no concern because it's not a mokem sheish sirta. It tends to be more of a flat, uncreased area. And there's no concern of the eris being trapped, whereas according to Tanakama, we don't differentiate, keep it away from hands, feet, or face. Amar mar. So what did we just learn? Lo yashkemen lo behemtoy, lo behemschaver. Don't feed it to your animal or your friend's animal. Vatani, we have a brayso. You can feed it to your animal. Of a mashka, lo behemasatzmoy. Mashke, lo behemasat. You can feed it to your animal, no concern. Answers the Gemara, that's not a regular cow or an ox. Ketanya hilashunu, that brayso which allows giving this water to one's animal, speaking about a cat. Rashi brings the Gemara Psachim. The cat is unaffected by snake venom. In fact, the cats would actually eat the snake himself. So if you have a snake problem, have the cat run around, take care of it. So there's no medical, no adverse effect on the animal. If that's the case, that was speaking about cats, then why only your own cat? The chaver nami. Why can't you offer it to your next door neighbor's cat? It's not going to affect him. Well, says the Gemara, it's going to weaken the cat. The chavrei kachash. It's going to weaken the cat. You have no right to do that. The day nami kachash, well, that's going to happen to yours as well. You're not allowed to just weaken your cat for no good reason. It's baltashkas, right? You can't just harm your animal. You can't just destroy your possessions for no good reason. Answers the Gemara, Hada Bari. It's going to recover. It's just a temporary weakness. It's going to get back to itself after a while. So there's no concern because it's just a temporary dip. Well, the Chaver Nami Hada Bari. Well, that rationale can be applied to your friend's cat as well. Okay, I'll be weak for a day or two, but then I'll get back to himself. Answers the Gemara, no. You can't take chances by your friend's animal. Zimnan, it could happen. The Boilim is Zvuna. Perhaps his neighbor will decide to suddenly sell his cat. And now it's in its weakened state. He will not be able to fetch the proper value. He's going to cause him a loss. So keep it to your own animals. Okay, so that's it for today. Let's do a quick Zarah. Today's daf focused primarily on two issues, Yain Nesach and the issue of Gilui for concern of Sakana. So we went back and forth regarding Yain Mevushal, Yain Mazuk, right? Actually, it was the Yain Mazuk which took us back and forth. So, is there a concern of Gilui? Is there not a concern of Gilui? According to the Maskana, when it's Mazuk, Gilui applies. A snake would still be attracted to it, and Yain Nesach applies as well. But not by Yain Mevushal. There we say, Ema Mishim Gilui, Ve'ema Mishim Yain Nesach. The Gemara concludes that a person who's awake, that provides a deterrent to keep the snakes away, but not if he's in a sleeping state. We discussed taking water from an almana, from a guy. We discussed these off-brand wines, which are not very attractive to the nechashim, and therefore do not pose a gilu concern. Vinegar as well, but if it's somewhere in between, that was an interesting shaila. Well, Yain Nesach, there's no concern once it's past 3 days. But regarding Gilui, some were concerned about Gilui. Regarding freshly squeezed wine, there's no concern of Gilui as well. That applies for the first 3 days. We discussed noisy liquids, dripping liquids, that would deter any snakes. We discussed fruits, which are deemed safe unless you have an indication that they were visited by a creature, by a snake. Different types of venoms, the one that sinks, that floats more. And the care that should be taken regarding these liquids, not only shouldn't you be drinking them, you should not use them in a manner which poses a safety concern for others or others' animals as well. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha.